Hi, I'm Greg Nelson, and I grew up in Bismarck, 429 Shirley Street, out by the Memorial Bridge. I can remember when I was 2 and 3 years old, my mother marching us around. I was usually in my underwear, marching us around the living room, playing music for us. We were hitting pots and pans, so we'd march in time. And then when we were in grade school, she bought us little theory books and had us fill out our theory books, and we had to practice, and then we had contests to who could write the major, minor, modal scales the quickest, and that was my upbringing. I went to Wilmore School, Hughes Junior High, Bismarck High School, Bismarck Junior College at the time, now Bismarck State College, then a year at UND, back here at Mary College. Then I taught in the school system here, and had the high school orchestra for about 7 years. And then moved to Los Angeles, and then went on to my career in music there. So I had a recording studio with my friend Bill Townsend, and we recorded artists in the Midwest and here, and did commercial jingles. So I have so much that I owe to this city and to this state. But my childhood was not a good childhood. I have ADHD, and I have a hard time paying attention. That's just the problem. And my teachers would always say to me, Greg, would you like to join the rest of the class? Well, I would have loved to join the rest of the class, learn about dangling participles and verb tense, but I was too busy counting the squares on the radiator. Or I was looking out the window thinking about, important stuff, like why they killed old Yeller in that movie. I mean, this is where I was thinking. They may have been in history class, but I was off the coast of England over here. That coupled with I had talented brother and sister. My little sister, when she was 3 years old, we were driving across the Memorial Bridge, and it had a hum to it. And all of a sudden, she's jumping up in the seat before seatbelts, and she said, Daddy, drive 25. That's a B flat. What? The hum of the bridge at 25 was B flat. That's how we found out she had perfect pitch. Now, I didn't have it. My brother didn't. We're a couple blinking suckers over there from us. But and then she gave her own piano recital when she was 5 and playing Bach partitas, and she skipped first grade, and so that's why I hated her. And I had my brother, who had a beautiful voice, and he went to, he sang in city presentations and won talent contests, and he played proficiently on the violin. And then there was me. And for a period of time, there was an adult in my life that figured his pleasure was more important than my innocence. And that destroyed me. How do you say that? This was in the 50s, unfortunately, I'm old. In the 50s, so how do you say that to anybody? You don't even say that to your parents. You hold it in, and you're confused, and it's just icky. It's just ugly. And I was a lost puppy. But a couple weeks later, something turned. There was a call out to have cellos in the orchestra, more cellos. They didn't have enough, so they asked the junior high kids who's playing violin, if they wanted to switch, they'd have lessons. And so I figured I'm failing at the violin, so okay, I'll go. I was the only one there. I was sitting in the orchestra room, and in walks this woman, an angel. Her name was Rosemary Pearson. And she walked right up to me smiling, Greg, I'm so glad to see you. Tell me a little about you. And that hit an emotive chord in me, and I just started crying. I remember I couldn't quit crying. And I was trying to fake like, oh no, I got something in my eye. And she said, I didn't mean to upset you. But what happened is no one ever asked me about me. I was nothing. I was plankton in the sea of life. I was worthless in my mind, and I was stupid. but I mattered to her. And that changed everything for me. And she said, go pick out a cello. So I did. I thought, oh man, I'm going to screw this up too. And I picked that cello up and I held it. And when I played violin, I have a pinched nerve in my left hand, so when I was holding violin, my hand would just shake like it is now, just like that. And I'd get nervous, and it was just a disaster, me playing. But when I held that cello, the tension on my wrist released. And I didn't shake. And I sat down, and I took to that cello, and I practiced all summer, and I could play. I was good. And what was it? Was it her words? Was it what was it about that? It was her attitude. Now, for me, there were three different types of students. There was the student that was the high achiever, there was the student that is the gifted learner, and there was the creative thinker. Well, the high achieving student is someone who has their hand up all the time. It takes 8 to 16 repetitions. Dr. Bertie Kingor had these three groupings. She's an author, an educator, and they go home, they study, and they come back, they get A's, and the teacher loves them. The gifted learner is a whole different thing. He's could be bored because he just knows, or she. 1 to 3 repetitions, they know. They understand complex things, they can speak in complexities, and they're going to fare well. But the creative thinker, they're somewhere over the rainbow. I mean, they are somewhere else. And that described me. I always had a lot of ideas. They never worked, but I had a lot of ideas. But what was it about Rosemary? Rosemary, it was her attitude. She thought that I mattered. And there's Edwin Freeman wrote this, and I love it. He's a rabbi, and he's a real smart guy. So I know a little about that. But he says this: the colossal misunderstanding of the universe is that somehow we think insight motivates people to change. He said nothing could be further from the truth, because when your words are pursuing people, they move away. Even the most powerful words, most choice words, when they're used to overpower, lose their power. Attitudes are the true figures of speech, and nothing could be more true for me than that. And I could spend the rest of this time telling you about what happened to me. My life changed. I didn't have a creative thought in my body. I didn't know anything about creativity. But when she walked into that room, bam! My life changed. Just like that. And I can tell you about gold records and platinum records and lots of Grammys and an oratorio that premiered at Carnegie Hall as it did to standing room only. I can tell you about, I've heard my music played all over the world, South America, Russia, London. I've seen it translated everywhere. And I remember standing, when I first came to London, the first time to do an orchestral session, I was at CTS Studios. It's next to the old Wembley Stadium. And I walked among 88 of the choicest European symphony players there were. And we were doing something I'd written and produced. And I can't tell you what that feels like to get the sum total of these musicians' lives and have that rise up in me. That left me dumbstruck. And I went to my hotel. I was laying in bed with my wife, and I go, I can't believe they're paying me to do this. I don't even know where it's coming from. And I didn't. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't even know how I could stay alive in the music business, because you're only as good as your last recording. I mean, it's a tough business. I love Hunter S. Thompson. He was a writer for Rolling Stone magazine. And he said, the music business is a money trench, a long plastic hallway where pimps and thieves run free and good men die like dogs. There's also a negative side. So I like that. So I didn't know how I was doing that. So then I started wondering, where does this come? What are the origins? What are the origins of all this? And so I started thinking, well, it could be, let's look here. I did it. I'm responsible. I knew every step I was taking. I summoned the sum total of everything I knew and just spit it out and became wonderful. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, because if anyone knew the left side of my brain, they would see that it's a vast expanse of nothingness. There is nothing there. There could be an idiot monkey sitting in a lawn chair eating banana cupcakes, but that's about it. There is nothing there. So that's not it. Thank God for my wife and for my production assistant who kept me together. It could be serendipitous. It could be chance. It could be, oh, that's good fortune. You were lucky. And that's a valid argument. There's a lot of people think that and live that way. So you can't dismiss that. J.D. Vance, in his Hillbilly Elegy, which I think is a great book, I love it, said that when people live in impoverished situations for so long, they begin to internalize their inferiority, so much so that they become to think it's genetic. And I can understand that because that's how I felt when I was very young. I just internalized inferiority. But that's a choice. Genes, it's in your genes, although some of my relatives would disagree about that because they don't see it in their genes. And then what I came to, and this is just for me. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm just laying out stuff, so don't think I'm trying to convince anybody here. I believe it's a gift given. I believe that God gave me a gift. And I know that's what I believe, because I had no more to do with that than the color of my skin. I worked hard, but I just honed something that was just given to me. That's what I came to. And I think how we answer that question, the question of creativity, it has much to do with how we see ourselves, how we see others, how we see the world. Because if it's all about us, all about me, and I did it, I'm the guy, that gives fertile ground, I'll tell you, for comparisons, looking to devalue, dismiss with a look, a judgment, an action, dismiss people. But when you become grateful, you begin to appreciate things in people. You look at them differently. You see them because they matter. They matter. Dr. Stephen Stonsky said something that was so good. He wrote this article, Anger in the Age of Entitlement. That's what he wrote. And it's this real long thing. It's real complicated. And I didn't get all that because complicated things are just too complicated for me. But there are two sentences there that I did get. And I love these two sentences. When I appreciate you, my life is enhanced. When I don't appreciate you, my life is diminished. And that rings so true to me because I believe that gratefulness and thinking that people matter is the positive stuff that is the core of our society. It makes it stronger. I think it's part of the positive marrow and the backbone of our country. I think it's some of the oil of the essential oils that nurture the world. That's what I think. And I know this. I know that I understand that we're not a harbor. I'm in an ocean of people that see things much differently than I do. But it is incumbent on me to appreciate them, to care about them, to think that they matter, whether I agree or not agree with them. And so I think that when you see gratefulness as a powerhouse, it will change not only your life, but our culture. I wanted to close with something, but I won't. Thank you very much. Cheers.